Okay, I'm live. I think I'm, what am I? No, I'm still on time there, I guess. Right on, right on. I'm just going to check on I was just messing with my lighting there. I got a little brighter in here and I can see that it's affected in my glasses here, the lights. But anyways, we're going to deal with that. We'll be all right. We'll be all right. But anyways, like I say, in the meantime, just give me a second here. I check and make sure everything's going good on all the platforms. As you folks know, this will be live streamed X, Rumble, YouTube, and Odyssey. So I'm just going to check on X and let everyone know yeah, I'm live. Lots and lots to cover today, and yeah, some important content, obviously, as per usual. It's like a never ending thing, right? Never ending thing. Anyways, let me like I say, just check on my live streaming over here. Let me just turn the volume down here. All right, so that's good over on Twitter. Let me just repost this bad boy. Let them know. Let the fine folks over on X know that I'm live. I'm live. All right. Okay, that one's going out. Now we'll check on the Rumble. Let's check out the Rumble. Actually, yeah, while that 30-second placeholder video loads. Okay, go ahead, play. Yeah. Um, we'll check and see. Actually, I might as well write down here. I'm live. Live. Yeah, right on. Right on. All right. And of course, just give that a couple more seconds here, and then I'll check on the YouTube. The YouTube. Turn the volume down here over on Rumble too. Yeah, that's looking good. Looking good. And we'll do the Rumble. Or I mean the Odyssey. Wow. Okay. Jeez. So far, so good. Yep. Yep. Gall darn it. Well, gall darn it, folks. Everything seems to be going off without a hitch. Anyways, I do want to one small little thing that I wanted to cover. It's really, really important. As you folks know, the typical folks, I should say, that frequent my live streams and have been following my content for a long time now. As you folks know, two people very early on in my I don't know what you want to call it, awakening, or just coming to learn about what does it mean to be a free human being anyways, because sadly, with all the education we get throughout the entirety of our lives, whether it's through the public indoctrination centers or even from the people that are, the wise, the intelligent, the all-knowing, right? Or even religious people, like none of them, right? Not one of them, for the most part, for most of us, are ever really, I don't know if it's whether it's willing or capable of properly informing us of this very, very fundamental aspect of humanity, which is what the hell does it even mean to be free, right? Now, once again, on my, I guess, well, let's call it my philosophical journey, which is the pursuit of truth as it pertains to metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics, right? As I was, traveling down that long, windy, twisty, up and down, peaks and valleys. It's a long road, and I have definitely not reached my final destination as of yet. But it has been a very eye-opening, enlightening journey up until this point, I got to tell you, and I'm sure you folks feel the same way. It's one of the greatest things about this kind of a journey, in terms of not playing with the politics. I mean, we delve into the politics, of course, but at the philosophical level, it's just so awakening, not just like mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, all these things. It's just been so fulfilling and enlightening in my life, I got to tell you. But the two main people early on, well, I should say three, I guess, but Ron Paul, yeah, I guess you could say he plays both sides of that fence. Now, Ron Paul was obviously the guy that got me into learning about libertarianism, or the philosophy of liberty. Although at that point, early on, at least, it was at the political level. So libertarianism in terms of the political realm, right? And the way that government was formed in the US and how the Constitution was written. So Ron Paul, big, key player in that journey for me, or at least put me on that path. So I got to give kudos and credit where it's due. Shout out to Ron Paul. Thank you. And there's millions of people, not just Canadians, Americans, British, the UK, people from all over the world that attribute that kind of a journey, or at least him helping them start them down that journey, right? But after that, and we libertarians, philosophically minded libertarians, kind of have that, that kind of insider joke that only we kind of understand is, how long did it take you to go from like minarchist to basically an anarchist or a philosophical libertarian or a full like voluntarist? Yeah, it's like 6 months or so. Well, I guess that depends on, how quick you are to travel along that journey intellectually, right? But and how quickly you allow your preconceived notions of the world to be destroyed, right? Because that's a difficult journey. That's one of the most difficult aspects of the journey is you have to be willing to allow all that stuff to shatter and break. But you know what? What's on the other side of that is just so much better. I got to say that. But once again, it was Stefan Molyneux, and especially I remember back early in the days, like when he was driving in his car and like, starting down that whole philosophy, learning about philosophy, and the way he did that, right? And it was in each video form, and you got to take that journey one step at a time. And each video was so enlightening. I couldn't wait to get to the next one to learn more. But another person, once again, now I guess still philosophical, really in his teachings, but comes at it from a totally different angle is Larkin Rose. But once again, Larkin Rose and the kind of content that he produced, and just listen to the man defend, anarchism or libertarianism or voluntarism. It just seems so rock solid. Well, obviously he's knowledgeable, and he was even knowledgeable enough at that time that he could, defend his positions in just, in a great manner, right? So that just left anyone that was observing him like, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. I should learn more. But anyways, just as you folks know, I recently watched the new version. It's a full-length feature film. Like I say, great direction, great production values, the whole spiel, great acting. The Jones Plantation, and wow, was that ever, like I say, real well done. And even the very early on version that he uploaded on his YouTube channel was another great step in that intellectual journey, into that philosophical journey, and learning what it is to be free human being. But I got to tell you now, he's looking for a little bit of assistance at this point in time, and I was watching his video, and this is another one of his projects that, I can't wait until it's done. I just can't wait. And this has been years in the making, called The Mirror. And you folks are familiar, or some of you are, with my whole 4-question quest. I basically took, a lot of the things I learned from each one of those and others as well. And once again, there are plenty of other people other than those 3 that have helped me along in my journey. I'm sorry if I'm leaving any of you folks out, but just for this particular live stream, like I say, those are the 3 I want to focus on. In terms of actually what I'm trying to say now, but that philosophical journey was so profound, and all that knowledge that I learned was so profound. But that 4-question quest, I basically took all that knowledge and I tried to narrow it down to that 4 questions. And you folks have heard me say it, and you've seen that I've shared it around on all my social media platforms. Now, how well does it work? I don't know. Like I say, the people that read them, at least guaranteed, if you're willing to read the 4 questions and answer those questions honestly, you're going to have somewhat of an enlightening moment, or that light bulb comes on in your head kind of moment. Once again, if you're intellectually honest and willing to break your old paradigms. But I got to tell you, Larkin Rose has stepped it up to a whole nother level. And like I say, this has been years in the making with his project called The Mirror, which is basically to take that. It's almost, from how I can describe it, almost like an interactive, not quite a video game, although kind of something similar to a video game. It is software based, and it basically will take you down that kind of philosophical journey and asking you questions. And of course, you are just going to use your own mind your understanding of ethics, right? Your understanding of the world and what, especially the kind of person that's going to want to even learn about these things, right? But it'll take you on that journey in an interactive manner, rather than a person, talking to you, someone like myself. You'll be able to, like I say, just do it from the comfort of your own home, on your screen at the time of your leisure. And yeah, I heard him say it'll be free as well, but obviously not free to produce, which is why, yes, if you can help contribute to him, I've shared it on all my social media pages, a big write-up about it, and then you'll see the YouTube video that he placed there where he's basically asking, he needs a little financial help. But if you can afford to donate to this project, I got to say, even if Fraser, if you're out there and you are looking to contribute to my live stream, by all means, please, I ask of you, rather than donate to me for this particular live stream, if you would, is just, if you're comfortable with that, if you're okay with that, if you wouldn't mind contributing to the project that Larkin Rose is doing called The Mirror, because like I say, I think this is another one of those projects that's going to be really, really great in terms of getting more and more people up to speed in terms of learning what Liberty's all about. But anyways, like I say, thanks. I just wanted to mention that real quick. And once again, shout out to Larkin Rose. Well, shout out to Stefan Molyneux as well. But in particular for this live stream, like I say, shout out to Larkin Rose for his continued efforts to help educate, inform, and enlighten us. Right? Very, very appreciative of that man and everything that he's done. So let me just close up a couple more windows here. Let's see. Yeah, should I close up X? I'll just leave it on for now. For now. Anyways, I'm just going to check and see. Let me go into the comments here. All right. So like I say, I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes while I'm waiting for some people to come into the live stream. I know this was a bit of a short notice, although I did set it up, at least 3 or 4 hours ago. So should have been enough time, I guess, for some people to get the notifications. But you know how that works. Takes a little bit of time for people to start trickling in. But yeah, like I say, there's a lot of stuff here that I wanted to cover. So actually, you know what? What the heck? Let's just get to it, right? Let's just get to it. So the first one, now, as you see, this censorship, this is the first area or topic of discussion or point that I wanted to bring up. And yeah, there's, as you folks know, Bill C-11 and Bill, was it C-18? They're already, put into law in Canada. So there's already, as you know, lots of suppression and censorship in this country already. But yes, but wait, with the Trudeau Liberals and their attempt to tyrannize, suppress, and quell free speech, their whole thing is, but wait, there's more. And yeah, there is. So I just want to make sure that you folks are aware of this stuff. And I know it's a lot these days because there's so much that we need to be aware of that I know it sometimes it becomes or seems overwhelming. But, once again, this is the world we live in. I didn't create it, but I, like the rest of you, have to live in it. So like I say, the more educated, more informed we are, the more enlightened we are, the better prepared we will be. And the more we will possibly do to counter this stuff. So anyways, like I say, so this one here is a CBC News article under the politics section, right? Of course. Yeah, there's no philosophical section on CBC, as you folks are aware of, right? So in other words, you're not going to really get much of an education, but you will get slightly informed in some degree. They got to be useful to do at least something. Anyways, experts urge federal government to pursue moderate, judicious approach to harmful content online. Previous version of bill addressing online harms was harshly criticized, and rightfully so. Let me just throw my glasses on here, folks. So this is reported by Christian Paslang. This was back February 11, 2024. So yeah, it's been sitting in the background a little bit here for a little while. Digital policy experts say the Liberal government should be restrained when it comes to formulating its promised legislation governing online harms. In an interview on CBC Radio's The House that aired Saturday, Emily Laidlaw, an associate professor at the University of Calgary, said the federal government faced a major challenge in crafting a bill that was technically viable and did not overstep itself. It's really hard legislation to write, Laidlaw, who holds the Canada Research Chair in Cybersecurity Law, told host Catherine Cullen. No matter where you turn, this raises issues of freedom of expression. Some of the solutions are actually technical solutions, and so it's hard to get it right. It takes quite a bit of effort and finessing, and not everyone's going to agree on the final result. The federal Liberals under Justin Trudeau have long promised legislation to help deal with the issue of online harms, which can include a wide array of issues from harassment to child sexual exploitation. But that's the thing. Yeah, the federal Liberals under Justin Trudeau, since he's been in power, right? That's who tried to enact this. But, and especially for those of you who are big con supporters, the Conservative Party of Canada, yeah, remember Vic Tays, under the Stephen Harper regime, they tried the same thing. Now, luckily and strangely at the same time enough, major corporations such as Google, and YouTube, which is a subsidiary of Google, Facebook, Twitter, all the big platforms at the time, all the social media platforms at the time. Well, I guess because it was being done under a conservative government, which I use that word very loosely, as you folks know, because there's not many actual genuine conservatives in the Conservative Party of Canada. That's for damn sure. But yeah, they tried that stuff. Remember, Vic Tays, either you're with us or you're with the child predators or all that stuff. So, playing that thing with, either you accept this, either you agree with us, or you're a very, very bad person that supports, child exploitation and stuff online, right? Or child pornography or stuff like that, which is, that's just that you fail in so many levels. But once again, the Trudeau Liberals are now going to do that. And boy, you're not hearing a whole lot of pushback from those very same social media platforms, which, like this kind of bill, it's relatively about the same, covers the same, or at least pretends to cover the same kind of online so-called harms. And who knows, under the Trudeau Liberals could very much be even worse, because that's one thing I will say is, at least the progressives are the one leading, right? Driving the bus, where the conservatives are just, back there driving the speed limit in their granny carts and their golf carts, right? But which is a sad reality of your conservative. Like, why you always got to be? If you want to tyrannize the people, don't you want to step up and at least be the best at it, right? Instead of following or hanging off the coattails of your progressive counterparts. I don't know. Anyways, I digress on that one. But yeah, as we know, both sides of the political divide are hell-bent and intent on suppressing our speech and using this under the pretense of benevolence, laying political cover under the pretense of benevolence, or for your own good, or to protect the vulnerable, or in this particular case, children, right? Which, it's to appeal to our heart so that we're not thinking with our head. And of course, we have both, and we should be using both. Anyways, earlier this week, the Canadian Press reported the government is also looking to ensure the legislation covers exploitation deepfakes, such as the recent images of Taylor Swift, which received global attention, including from the White House in January. Now, of course, once again, we're all against these kind of things, and it's easy to convince people, I should support this because I'm against child sexual exploitation. Well, who the hell isn't? Well, other than a very, very strange, evil cohort of people, a very small minority cohort of people in society, right? None of us are in agreement with them, but damn well that that's just the rhetoric. That's the excuse they're going to use to clamp down even further on our speech or our inherent rights, which do include privacy. Keeping our kids and young people safe online is a legislative priority for our government, especially given the evolving capabilities of AI, Justice Minister Arif Virani said in an emailed statement to the Canadian Press. He singled out deepfakes as content that can exacerbate forms of online exploitation, harassment, and cyberbullying. A previous version of the online harms legislation, introduced shortly before the 2021 election, was met with strong criticism from a range of interested parties. The concept of the legislation is not popular with Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who has consistently accused the Liberal government of overreach and censorship, saying the government cannot differentiate between hate speech and speech to hate. So once again, but he was on board with it. If you look back at his voting, was he on? He was probably, I should say with any amount of 100, I don't have 100% certainty, but I'm pretty sure a lot of these folks that are pretend to be against it now were all for it when it was being put forth and presented by their party leaders, right? At the time, aka Stephen Harper or one of the fellow MPs, which was, like I say, Vic Tays. But Laidlaw says there's hope the government has reimagined its approach to the issue away from a takedown model and towards a duty of care approach. So, kind of like they reworded it. It's not a carbon tax, folks, right? You know what I mean? No, it's a something rebate, right? So they'll manipulate the words in hopes that they'll be able to convince you to accept this political rhetoric, which sadly a lot of Canadians will do. My biggest fear at the moment is that the second this bill is introduced, it's going to be positioned as the saviors of the internet, Laidlaw said. If this is done well, it's actually going to be relatively narrow. It's not going to solve all the problems of online harms. Yeah, no kidding. Just like with anything, everything the government says they're going to do, like the war on anything, it never works out as intended. And all you do is send a lot of this shit even further underground, right? So if you can't find these kind of terrible things that we're all against, right, on your favorite social media pages, well, it'll be just somewhere else on the dark web or somewhere else. That's the thing. None of these acts of legislation ever work out as intended, other than to silence and suppress, people's online speech or their privacy or their freedoms, for that matter. Matt Hatfield, executive director of the advocacy group Open Media, agreed that the first version of the government's legislation would not have ended well. There are a lot of very serious issues with that proposal at the time. It took a very simplistic, very punitive approach that I think would have led to the removal of a lot of lawful content, he said. I really hope that they have a judicious bill that addresses some of the most easy to address content very directly and establishes a regulator who can enforce transparency on platforms and give us more information about what's going on them, which maybe will justify further legislation in the future. Right. So against it in some way, but all for it in others. So not consistent in any way, as you would expect. Hatfield said he worried about how much the government actually learned from more extensive consultation pursued during the development of this newer legislation. The Canadian push for online harms legislation is part of a broader international push to regulate social media companies. The federal government has already clashed with major tech companies over its online news legislation. Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, recently said that it would restrict teens from seeing content related to suicide, self-harm, and eating disorders. Well, that's the area where, once again, it's up to these platforms. And this is where people can vote with their, not just their dollars, well, not so much on the free platforms, but with the fact that, are you on them? Do you support these platforms, or do you go elsewhere who are willing to crack down on some of this child exploitation? Because any government bill, one size fits all approach, is not going to work out as intended and will be the antithesis of that. Internet companies should be accountable for enforcing standards on harmful content. It's irresponsible to remove all harmful content from the internet. But when people use dozens of different sharing services, all with their own policies and process, we need a more standardized approach, CEO Mercer. So he just doesn't want to have the responsibility, right, of doing it himself or hiring people to do it on behalf of him or his business, his corporations, right? He wants to offload that to big government. Anyways, folks, this will be linked in the description of the video below, and then I'm just going to move on because there's more to that, because it's basically, as it pertains, this is going to be just a kind of a follow-up on that. So this is basically along the same lines. And as you can see, of course, under the politics section, once again, no more Pornhub. That will depend on what happens with the Senate bill. Bill proposed to enshrine age verification requirement. This is reported by Stephanie Taylor and Mickey Jurek, the Canadian Press. As you can see the Canadian Press posted February 19th, 2024. But yet CBC basically copy and paste, this story, and then will offer their own rhetoric within it. The owners of Pornhub say blocking access to Canadians is among options they're considering considering as they try to persuade parliamentarians to reject an approach for age verification outlined in a controversial Senate bill. We've taken different options in different jurisdictions, said Solomon Friedman, a partner and vice president of compliance at Ethical Capital Partners, which owns Pornhub's parent company, ALO. Now, let me just say, in terms of the age verification, listen, I mean, I initially first is like, well, yeah, you should have age verification. You shouldn't have kids looking at some of this disgusting, vile online porn that's out there, right? Of course not. But what does that mean? What does that entail? You got to take a moment to think about these things, which sadly, a lot of Canadians don't. It means you have to issue government ID, and that would mean no matter who you are or what age you are. So that means to go to any of these websites now, you got to have somewhere in some database somewhere, and then of course government would require to have access to that content so that they can verify and regulate it, right? So now, inadvertently, by a runaround, government will have access to not just all the porn sites that you frequent, but can follow you and have an even bigger encroachment into your privacy. That's the big thing. That's the key factor. So as much, of course, we would all be for, people that are under the age, whatever the age they would pick, what would be 16 or 18, let's say, or whatever, that yes, they shouldn't be on these platforms looking at porn. But once again, that should be the responsibility of parents. Parents need to start paying a little bit more attention to what their kids do online. If you're genuinely concerned, because you got to expect there's a lot of Canadians are concerned about this. But once again, don't offload that responsibility to government, which will fuck it up anyways and will never achieve what you're hoping for or the aims that they claim to be trying to implement. No, it'll be, once again, just more encroachment into our private lives and a way to basically create a trail of where we go, right? That's what it is at the end of the day. And then that's just another thing where you get another area of this, another aspect would be getting people comfortable with using digital ID when you go online. So it starts out for just the porn sites, right? But then what's next? You know how that slippery slope or slippery slope works, folks, is it starts out here, but where the hell do you end up? And that's a big thing. Anyways, I really don't think I really need to cover too much more of that, because to me, the biggest part of that particular story is the fact that, yes, digital ID as a requirement. So once again, and I've already shared my concerns about that. Now, I just wanted to bring one more thing on as it pertains to this stuff. I'm still trying to learn what this particular thing is all about, but I'm definitely already a little bit suspicious, right? Especially when you look, it's on the politics. It's under the politics section once again in another CBC article. Canada, US, UK endorse framework to fight foreign information manipulation. Really? Let's read more. Misinformation concerns growing as democracies prepare for pending elections. Now, this is interesting. This report by Benjamin Lopez Stephen, February 16th, 2024. Oh, there you go. Richie with Sumac, Joe Biden, and Trudeau. Do you think you can trust these folks? I mean, just one of them alone is not just untrustworthy, but, obviously more than willing to tyrannize the people. But all three of them put together, there definitely should be red flags being raised, when you see these three together. Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom say they are deeply concerned about foreign information manipulation, have jointly endorsed a framework to counter the threat. No, they're just concerned about information that they disagree with. They want to be the sole propagandists. They want to be the sole thought leaders and projectors of narratives, right? Well, them and their media mouthpieces, who will just parrot it all. The time is now for a collective approach. I hate even the word collective, although collective by itself is not a bad thing, but because it's so closely intertwined in the kind of people that use those words are collectivists. Anyways, the time is now for a collective approach to the foreign information manipulation threat that builds a coalition of like-minded countries committed to strengthening resilience and response to information manipulation, the three countries said in a joint media release on Friday. The framework they're endorsing was released in mid-January by the U.S. State Department. It outlined multiple principles for fighting foreign information manipulation, such as supporting independent media and encouraging countries to go beyond monitor and report approaches. Independent media. You mean the media that they yeah. I imagine they're looking to support people like myself or some of the Rebel News or others. Yeah, no, damn well that's not what that's about, right? Um, Since last August, a string of reports have highlighted concerns from various Canadian organizations about disinformation campaigns targeting the country. During that month, Global Affairs Canada said a disinformation operation on the Chinese social media platform WeChat spread false information about Conservative MP Michael Chong's identity and political stances. Later in October, GAC said the Chinese government was likely behind a camouflage disinformation campaign targeting Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, and other MPs. Now, listen to this, folks. This is hilarious. I'll come back to this in a bit. But I wanted to show you this because, once again, they're acting as if they're concerned about the Chinese using one of their platforms, as the means to spread misinformation or manipulate things in terms of votes and elections. Now, we already know that kind of thing definitely does take place. But how does that line up with this, right? Once again, when you talk about these hacks in the media, they're just so used to just pumping out shit with no baseline principle or narrative based on ethics or principles that this is what you end up with, right? I mean, talk about a walking, talking contradiction. In particular, once again, yeah, this is CBC. Look at this. Look at this. Let me read a little bit here for you. TikTok is becoming a popular source for news. Can it help fill the gaps left by local TV news cuts? Media experts say loss of news programming, journalism jobs not easily replaced. This reported by Nick Logan, February 21st, 2024. Frank Krina didn't necessarily set out to become someone people turn to for news headlines, but that's exactly what has happened with his popular TikTok account. I'm like advertising for them too, right? Free advertising. He is adamantly not a journalist, which you're not going to get any of that for any of the alternative media, that the kind of folks that would actually be challenging the establishment, right? Narratives. Oh, no. He is admittedly not a journalist. He's a full-time school teacher in the Toronto area. Okay, but his concise yet punchy videos breaking down local and national news stories, sometimes infused with his personal takes on the topics, has attracted nearly 100,000 followers to his account. Yeah, see? And they advertising for the fucking guy. Like, really though? Really though? CBC is so pathetic. They don't even try to hide their shit, right? They don't even try to hide what they're trying to do. This was a way for me to reach people who wanted to be informed but didn't want to sit down and watch the evening news or weren't traditional readers, said Krina. The 30-year-old is one of many Canadian TikTokers, including former Global News journalist. Oh, look, Rachel Gilmore and former CP24 reporter Brandon Gonez, who are turning TikTok into a favored platform for news. So, you see what I mean? Do you see what I mean? Like, it's right there in your face. Just boom, just shoved right in your face that, yeah, we're just going to promote and basically be the advertising arm, the propagandist arm to get people that, in case you're not listening, or the young people that aren't listening to our bunch of old hacks, right? In the old antiquated establishment media. Well, here's people that are like-minded, because we all know what, Rachel Gilmore, the kind of shit, kind of stuff, woke, leftist, progressive nonsense that she espouses. So, but see, this is the CBC, right? Basically carrying favor or suggesting, well, here's the alternative media that you should be listening to. You see that sleight of hand? You see that propaganda? You see that manipulation? Yeah, that's what the CBC is all about these days. They're demonstrating that there is a demand for watching someone deliver the news when the traditional local TV news landscape is diminishing. Once again, you're not going to hear anyone saying, hey, you should be listening to things like, people like, Bennett Hunter, the Canadian Libertarian, or anyone that would cover this kind of stuff. Because once again, look at what I do to it, right? No, I actually try to properly, educate, inform, and push back against the status quo or the establishment media, right? Oh, no, you don't want to say anything good or positive about people like me. That's for damn sure. That would be very counterproductive for their goals, right? And their aspirations. But media experts, they always like the experts. How many, like, once again, I know you guys are probably sick of me hearing me saying this, but I just can't help but repeat. How many like times you hear the word experts thrown around these days that just did not happen. It was nothing like this in the past, right? The minute they're throwing experts, you should know is like, really? Oh, so they're propagandists that agree with our narrative. Yeah. Right. Say, though some audiences have shifted to less conventional options, local TV news reporting isn't easily replaced once it disappears. There are, people providing valuable information on TikTok. Once again, you're TikTok, right? No, which is once again owned by another Chinese company. But you're not seeing anything here on free speech platforms such as X, right? Or Minds, right? No, not going to get anything like that. No. I mean, and think about it. X is at least owned by American, right? And a guy that basically is a free speech absolutist, although I will admit, says that in practice, or says that in the theoretical realm, but that doesn't exactly work out in actual practice. But like I say, way better than the alternatives, way better than the rest. That's for certain, right? So, but you're not seeing any of that. Why? Because on X, people like me can espouse my view. I can interact and exchange information or push back against the rhetoric or the propaganda in comments, replies, right? Reposts and quotes and stuff like that. So no, they won't ever say something like that. But no, TikTok, right? Says Nicole Blanchette, an associate professor at Toronto Metropolitan University School of Journalism and a former producer with City News. See, it's just the establishment. It's just the establishment on different platforms. That's all it is, folks. That's all they're advocating for. Same shit, different pile, slightly different smell. But how much one person can do compared to a newsroom, it's not comparable. Well, I don't know. I can do a lot more than a lot of newsrooms can in terms of properly educate, inform, and enlighten people. So there's that. But that's once again, you're talking about people who come from the establishment. So yeah, now they're not quite on par with people like myself, are they? News outlets faced with dwindling ad revenue have been chasing audiences to new social media platforms for some time, whether it was Facebook, YouTube, or X, which was formerly known as Twitter, with varying success. In its 2023 digital news report, the Reuters Institute found 69% of Canadians get their news online, which include both websites and social media, while 49% said they watch TV news, a number driven by viewers 45 and up. Yeah, so like I say, the older crowd, younger people, not there. And I don't know who this report was asking where they said that 49% said they watch TV news. Like, who are these 49%? Like, you're going to tell me that half of Canadians, in particular young people, and too, because that half of Canadians would be a lot of young people, a lot of people under 49, right? Or 45. You tell me, like, anyways, whatever. Facebook at the time the research was conducted was the most popular social media source for news, but its parent company Meta has since well, there you go. Yeah, Facebook's like, yeah, I'm not playing your game. Now, whether that works out beneficial for us or being a net negative, once again, who's to say on that? But yeah, Facebook's no longer allowing, and I know that myself, which is why I got to do the screen capture, quoting. Well, I won't give away the secrets, but there are ways to circumvent, these suppression techniques, right? For those of us that can think critically and outside the box anyways, right? And problem solve. Block news access for Canadian users in response to the federal government's online News Act. X, since taken over by billionaire Elon Musk, has turned its focus away from news. No, there's still all kinds. Elon hasn't turned anything away from nothing. Everyone is still allowed, and X is still accessible, and you still see a lot of these establishment hacks. So it's not that Elon Musk, has pivoted away to not having news content on the site. It's just that the establishment hacks are so pissed off that Elon, who won't play the political game or go along with their progressive narratives, isn't on board with just prop them up constantly and suppressing everyone else. See, you got to read between the lines here, right? The audience for news on TikTok is small but growing. It accounted for just 5% of news consumption in the Reuters Institute survey of 2,150 Canadians conducted in early 2023, and the demographics, not surprisingly, tend to skew younger. All right. A similar Pew Research poll in the U.S. found TikTok saw the biggest growth among those who regularly get their news from social media, rising from 22% in 2020 to 43% last year. So what this is really means, anyways, I'll bring this back off here. And once again, this will be linked in the description below as well, is what they're saying is they're recognizing that their old platforms are dying. And yeah, I mean, just the amount of layoffs and business closures and well, that's the thing. If establishment media actually cared so much about, gaining a larger audience or being viable going forward, well, maybe you'd fucking stop propagandizing the people and give them just the news, just the facts. Or if you're going to play the pundit game, at least allow people who actually, challenge the narrative, on your programs. That's why people pivot away, young or old, right? They recognize that it's everything they get in terms of online media or establishment media, in terms of those who represent the establishment, are just at function in a full-on echo chamber. That's why. But once again, rather than actually do the right thing, no, they're just trying to persuade younger people in particular. Well, here, go to TikTok, where some of these old establishment media hacks or younger establishment media hacks are now spreading their political propaganda or rhetoric, right? That's really all it is at the end of the day. I'll just read a little bit more. I'll bring this back here for the original one that we were, in terms of the Canada, US, and the UK. You get a little bit more information. Okay, so the GAC said the Chinese government was likely behind a spamouflage disinformation campaign. So, yeah, we got that part. A spamouflage campaign uses hijacked social media accounts to post propaganda messages across social media platforms. GAC said the post claimed a critic of the Chinese Communist Party in Canada accused various MPs of criminal and ethical violations. GAC said the post likely involved deepfake manipulation videos, but the heightened attention on foreign information manipulation isn't restricted to Canada. So once again, this is laying political cover, which there is some truth to this foreign election meddling and misinformation campaigns from foreign actors such as the Communist Party of China or even Russia, to whatever extent, right? But that's just more political cover, because as you've seen, that was down further into the article. The big emphasis was, getting Canadians up in arms in terms of just any kind of misinformation, which we know once again where that narrative's coming from, is they're losing grip or their grip on power in terms of information control. That's the biggest threat that the establishment perceives. Major world powers are increasingly worried about the spread of misinformation through social media platforms that are harder to contain, especially in a year where countries making up over 60% of global economic output, including the US, Britain, and India, are due to hold elections. So that's what it is. They got their man that they want to win these elections, right? And they don't want anyone to fuck that up because it might disrupt the status quo or the current establishment regime. Once again, that's one of their areas of grave concern, not whether you're getting, wrong think information or not. Securing the integrity of the global information ecosystem is central to popular confidence in governance institutions and processes, trust in elected leaders, and the preservation of democracy, the joint release said. So let me read that again. Securing the integrity of the global information ecosystem is central to what? Popular confidence in governance institutions and processes, trust in elected leaders, and the preservation of democracy. So it's all about, once again, exactly what I said, just spoken in different words. Maintaining the current ruling regime and the status quo. And like I say, they're more than willing to do anything that they can come up with, conjure in their little puny minds, their petty control freak minds, to do in order to make that a reality or to bring it to fruition. Marcus Kolga, founder of DisinfoWatch, said the announcement is very good news. I think it'll help very quickly build a societal resilience against foreign information manipulation, especially the kind that comes from Russia and comes from China. He said, forget about the misinformation, or should I say, the propaganda and the outright lies and the manipulation and distortion of facts that come from our own government or thought leaders, right? Oh my God. Like, once again, no major concern for that actually happening. And the very real fact that it has been happening for many, many years now. No, it's those foreign boogeymen, right? That we need to be concerned about. Don't worry about what's happening in your own backyard. The framework itself is also innovative because it focuses on cooperating with civil society and academia. Yeah, more of, academia and civil society. So in other words, everyone's who's part and parcel of parroting the progressive narrative, which, like I say, these people are dominating in all these institutions, right? The framework itself, civil society often gets overlooked, but it's civil society that's really in the trenches fighting foreign information manipulation and influence operations, he added. Anyways, folks, I'll bring this one off. I think we covered enough of that. But yeah, trust me, they're not concerned about, civil libertarians or institutions that actually promote genuine freedom of speech or liberty. You never heard any of that, or anyone sourcing any institution or outlets that are pertaining to that kind of stuff, did you? Not a lick, not a word, right? Now this here, I'll bring this on. This is from True North. Basically, this is all dealing with, like I say, the online censorship that is impending, folks. Don't forget that it is impending. So be paying attention. Of course, I'll be covering it. So this is from True North. Legacy media panicking as government's local journalism fund nears expiry date. Oh, geez. I wonder if this is why they're ramping up, right? It's reported by Cosmin de Souza, February 18th, 2024. One of the Liberal government's key funds for ailing legacy media companies is set to expire at the end of March, and news organizations are panicking over a lack of clarity on whether the fund will be renewed by Ottawa. The local journalism initiative was introduced by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in 2019 to offer up $50 million in funding over 5 years. Well, don't forget about the $595 million too, right? It was done under another whatever the hell fund, right? And the fact that CBC alone gets over $1 billion per year. Like, anyways, funds for eligible media companies are supposed to be used to hire journalists to report on local stories. According to News Media Canada, a group that has lobbied the federal government to step in to save the legacy media, there have been over 400 journalists hired under the program. All of them could be out of work if the fund doesn't get renewed, the organization is warning. Frankly, there are no other current federal funding initiatives that can replace it. It's a world-class program that other countries are looking at, really. News Media Canada CEO Paul Deegan told CBC News. Despite appeals from the legacy media to extend the fund, the Liberal government has not yet announced what the initiative's future might be. If I were to be asking for anything, it would be clear. More timely information that allows publishers to make informed decisions on what we know is going to happen, said legacy media advocate and press forward chair Jeanette Eggerson. Despite receiving taxpayer funding, some legacy media companies have halted local journalism. Anyways, folks, so you know that the fallout from these media outlets or organizations who aren't doing their jobs properly and are failing and falling by the wayside, which, listen, in a way it's good. Consider it creative destruction. And the fact that, there will be new entrants, maybe people a little bit more honest and forthright are willing to properly educate and inform, Canadian people who will fill those gaps, because it will not be a gap. Canadians will not be void of news. I assure you of that. I guarantee it. And this is just another article. Actually, I won't have to read this. I'll just kind of do the headline. This is another CBC News. Federal money kept hundreds of journalists employed in Canada, but the program's set to expire. After mass layoffs across country's largest news outlets, independent publications await news of their fate. Independent, right? Independent. And once again, as if CBC is worried about independent. Anyways, that also will be linked in the video. And here's a beautiful thing that I wanted to cover, actually, as it pertains to all of this in terms of the government-funded media. And shout out to the fine folks at Blacklocks for actually doing a good job in terms of actually pushing back against the establishment, because there are a few outlets, and I definitely recommend you support these outlets if you have the means to do so, because these are the ones who are genuinely and honestly pushing back against the narrative, the propaganda, or at least offering alternative perspectives on this, the big news stories and information that we receive on a daily basis. So let me just bring this up a little bit here. So once again, this was from Blacklock's reporter. How subsidies failed. Our submission to the Commons Heritage Committee. The Commons Heritage Committee on February 13th opened hearings on the following motion. Whereas news media are in the crisis due to dominance of foreign digital companies, hundreds of newsroom positions across Canada have been cut since the beginning of the year, and hundreds more are likely to be cut in the near future. And Canadian broadcasters, journalists, associations, news unions, and many experts agree that urgent action must be taken to ensure adequate diversified coverage in all regions, that the committee undertake a study to determine the appropriateness of the government providing support to the national news sector, holding a national forum on the media. Following is our submission to the committee. So this is what Blacklocks has to say about that. A national forum on media will never mention points in this brief. Yeah, no kidding. The notion implies a news crisis is universal. Foreigners are to blame and federal intervention is effective and praiseworthy. The motion echoes assertions of News Media Canada, representing the largest, most heavily subsidized, most unprofitable corporate newsrooms. Good point. Lobbyists assert losses are due not to the mismanagement, but cruel circumstances, big tech, and insufficient concrete steps the government can take to address this. This is self-serving. Each publisher is free to choose their own business model. We did, which is Blacklock's, right? Or Blacklock's reporting. They're not asking for subsidies or bailouts and seem to be doing just fine based on their business model. Maybe some of these establishment hacks should try to replicate or duplicate it. 4, Cabinet as late as 2017 opposed direct aid for failing newsrooms. Our approach will not be to bail out industry models that are no longer viable, said then Heritage Minister Melanie Joly. Rather, we will focus on efforts on supporting innovation, which obviously that idea fell by the wayside. Blacklock's reporter is a small independent publisher specializing in aggressive, high-volume, document-driven coverage of Parliament, access to information, public accounts, courts, and tribunals. Blacklock's has subscribers nationwide. Costs are recovered through subscriptions and licenses starting at $314 annually. Our business model is 272 years old, right? And it works as intended. That's the thing. We got to pay the kind of people and support the kind of people who are willing to, hold government to account. That's how you maintain independence, folks, right? That is literally how it's done. We thrive because social media platforms create a marketplace of 33 million Canadian internet users accessible at low cost. We monetize this through storefront sales and subscriptions and licenses. Big tech allowed us to build a national consumer base so broad, no single licensee accounts for more than 1% of annual revenues. Right on. News Media Canada in 2019 sought direct subsidies on assertions that A, a Canadian newsroom can thrive without subsidies, that subsidies are B, temporary, C, fair, and D, effective, that E, subsidies do not corrupt news coverage, and F, readers will never notice. These claims are false. A, no Canadian newsroom thrives without subsidies. Blacklock's is the only unsubsidized Canadian-owned news agency accredited by the Parliamentary Press Gallery. Like publishers targeted by the 1981 Kennedy Commission, we are alarmed by federal interference in newsrooms. Blacklock's is in the 12th year. The company is profitable and debt-free. We have never missed a shareholders' dividend. We have no angel investors or big tech funding. We have never paid for Google placements. Our advertisement is closed to all but longtime sponsors. B, subsidies are temporary. News Media Canada won $595 million in subsidies on a promised aid on a promised aid was temporary, expiring in 2024. There does need to be a deadline, testified Bob Cox, then chair of News Media Canada and publisher of the Winnipeg Free Press. Can you give us a sense of how long this transition will last? Asked Liberal MP Rachel Bendayan from Outremont, Quebec. The program itself is envisioned to be for 5 years, replied Chair Cox. I felt that was an appropriate period of time for the transition because, of course, there will be news outlets, newspapers that fail the transition, and you can't give them forever. There does need to be a deadline. Deadlines can focus you and get you moving to where you aren't moving now. And I think that's important. I see this as transitional program and temporary help. I don't like the idea of a long-term subsidy for newspapers that became permanent. C, subsidies are fair. The Canada Revenue Agency rewards qualified newsrooms with a 15% digital subscription tax credit. Only newsrooms that apply for subsidies qualify. Blacklock's readers are disqualified since we neither solicit nor accept subsidies. This unfairly penalizes our readers. Good point. D, subsidies are effective. Heritage Canada in 2023 acknowledged federal intervention was futile and cannot redress the structural decline of failing newsrooms. The department confirmed no net job creation resulted from subsidies. This was predictable. Government is saying you need to give more money forever because nobody is buying my buggy whips, testified Sue Gardner, former CBC executive. The state of subsidized journalism was appalling, said Gardner. It's terrible. I don't think anybody is arguing differently. Basically, subsidizing buggy whips. In an era where, buggies are going the wayside, right? To be replaced by bigger, better things. Newsroom subsidies were used to pay debts, dividends, and executive salaries. In one case documented in court filings, Saltwire Network Incorporated pocketed subsidies while laying off 237 employees, including longtime staff with up to 33 years of service. The Winnipeg Free Press received $822,000 in annual payroll rebates. In 2023, it closed its Parliamentary Hill Bureau after 128 years. There was no announcement. The Toronto Star qualified for $6 million in annual rebates. In 2023, it cut 600 Metroland Media Group jobs and permanently closed its Vancouver bureau. Black Press Group Ltd. received $985,000 in annual periodical fund subsidies. In a 2024 bankruptcy court filing, it detailed a years-long campaign of job cuts in a failed bid to recoup U.S. $149 billion lost in a venture in Akron, Ohio. Subsidies did not create jobs or improve journalism. E, subsidies do not corrupt news coverage. News Media Canada at 2019 acknowledged the predicament dismissively. I have not noticed this, testified Chair Cox. Even I cannot get journalists to write what I want, and I sign their paychecks. Corrupted coverage is evident in which, I got to make these a little bit bigger here. Corrupted coverage is evident in what the press does not write. Honest reporting is complete. Honest reporting is complete. A former Ottawa citizen publisher wrote in 2003, Canadian Parliamentary Review. News must not be withheld in pursuit of reward or because of fear of consequences. When News Media Canada petitioned MPs August 2nd, 2023 to make temporary payroll rebates permanent and double the rate to $29,750 per newsroom employee, no news media member reported the fact. We did. When Cabinet doubled rebates in its November 2023 fall economic statement at a $129 million cost, no member reported that fact. We did. Canada is facing not one news crisis, but two, testified Jeanette Agason, publisher of the Tyee. One is financial, the other is the crisis of distrust. Canadians are expressing unprecedented distrust towards the news and the reporters who deliver it. Canadians need to know who is funding the news they receive and on what terms. We need to rebuild trust in news, not damage it further. F, readers will never notice. Direct aid to the people who will report the news, that's dangerous, testified John Miller, a former Toronto Star foreign editor and professor emeritus at Toronto Metropolitan University. For instance, say I'm a reporter on a story about some scandal in government, and for various reasons, it's not there, and I back off. If one of my readers finds out about that, how will I defend myself when a reader says it's because I'm getting money from government? Yeah, good point. Taxpayers do not trust subsidized media. Asked, how much confidence do you have in the Canadian media? Only 31% of Canadians questioned in a Statistics Canada social survey expressed a good or great deal of confidence in media. And think about it, that's even among the kind of people who would be taking a Statistics Canada social survey, right? As a representation of the population at large, you know that number would skew much, much lower. The CRTC reports that 5 years after direct subsidies were introduced, Canadians shared a relatively weak opinion of media. Fewer agree they trust the information provided by news media in Canada. 36% said the commission. 26, the more government assistance news media gets, the more broken the relationship with readers becomes, testified Peter Menzies, former Calgary Herald editor-in-chief. The more that relationship is broken, the more subsidies will be required, and so on it goes. Anyways, folks, so this is, I definitely recommend this, and this will be linked in the description of the video below. And of course, this is linking to a whole lot more sources here. And once again, definitely, if you can afford to, support outlets such as BlackRock's, because once again, they're one of the very few. But I mean, even without the examples given here, we all know the anecdotal experiences and the real world experience of, government's been bailing out these news media organizations for years now, in particular the Trudeau government. And as you're seeing, it's only continued, not just the downward spiral and decline and lack of trust in them, but look at how many announcements we've had just in recent times, just in recent months, of these big giant conglomerates or media organizations who are, laying off thousands and thousands of people or closing down entirely. So has it worked? I mean, once again, no, a big resounding no. Anyways, I'm just going to check and see what's going on here. Well, that's strange. I haven't had any comments as of yet, but that's okay. I'm going to continue on. I will not be deterred. So because there's a lot of really important stuff, which is weird. I would consider this to be another, once again, although I think a lot of my live streams are quite important. But this one I would say in particular, but I don't know. I guess it just doesn't have that. Once again, the one live stream I've done recently that got thousands and thousands of views is the one that had the words Tucker Carlson in them. So once again, I just can't help but point out that people just are more concerned about gossip and what's happening in the news of the day and the shock and awe of everything, right? Which is why, political pundits and even the alternative ones are seemingly dominating the discourse these days, whereas the philosophically minded, we're way placed at the back of the bus. But hey, I'll continue to persist for the few that actually do care to be properly educated, enlightened, and informed. Anyway, so let me bring this on. I'll play that. It's just got a 2-minute video here. Once again, if you're a New Brunswicker, even more poignant, but even for any Canadian, right? Or anyone that's watching this, how many examples or proof, and it's all going to come to fruition. I think most of it has come to fruition now at this point, where people like myself, as it pertains to the COVID restrictions, the lockdowns, and all the impositions into our lives and infringements on our inherent and inalienable rights and freedoms, it was all done not based on science. Remember, we're following the science. No, not based on science, and really not based on anything other than, people that are either dazed and confused or just following the narrative or just unwilling to challenge anything in any way. Just basically putting in their days for a paycheck. Or once again, the petty tyrants. We can't forget about the petty tyrants and the authoritarians. So this here, once again, let me just share this 2-minute video. Okay, bring it up here. Let me just close this up a bit. So I'll just read the headline here. NB COVID-19 efforts above and beyond, but decisions lacked evidence, auditor. This was reported by Hina Alam, the Canadian Press. This was back December 14, 2023. So a little late getting to this one, but let me just read a little bit and then I'll play the 2-minute video. At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, New Brunswick's health department issued 33 recommendations without evidence to substantiate them, the province's Auditor General says. In his report presented to the legislature Thursday, Paul Martin said the office of the chief medical officer was unable to provide him with the scientific articles, papers, publications, and analysis it used to formulate many COVID-19 related recommendations that inform the provincial government's health orders. The health department said that's because it lacked those documents. It cannot provide a fulsome and detailed list of all the evidence consulted and used when recommendations were being formulated, Martin said in his report. During the pandemic, the health department issued a series of recommendations on such things as masking, cross-border travel, and restrictions on gatherings. The Auditor General, however, did not divulge the nature of the 33 recommendations that he said the province had no evidence to support. No evidence to support. Zero, folks. Zero. So where was the science? It wasn't there. And this is a good time. Listen, folks, when this kind of truth comes to light and this knowledge is in these reports, then yes, if you have the capability and the funds, then I highly recommend you start suing these governments or these health care institutions or these so-called experts who caused a lot of detrimental, not just social, but economic and personal harm to a lot of people, right? A lot of people. And once again, you need to hold these people to account, the ones who did so, right? Not only should you not forget, but you should at least be actively attempting to try to hold them to account for what they did. Otherwise, what's to dissuade them or prevent them from doing something similar going forward, right? Not much. Covering a period from April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2022, Martin's report said that while the health department went above and beyond, yeah, no shit, way more. What that really means is that's just, a little bit of cover for way too tyrannical, right? Way too tyrannical to support New Brunswickers. Right? There was several areas that needed improvement. At a news conference, the Auditor General was asked whether residents should be concerned about the lack of evidence to back up decisions made by the health department. When it comes to this type of situation, the pandemic, there's got to be accountability beyond the norms here, Martin said in response. And I would hope they would move forward, and I would hope they would move towards that direction in the future to have those improvements set up in case this happens again. Martin said he is always surprised when people don't get documentation about health-related decisions. If a doctor is overseeing any person or meeting with a person, they keep their files. They keep their notes. There's a file. There's evidence. I don't understand why it wouldn't be there in this case. Well, yeah, I can understand why, because none of the choices or the decisions they made, the positions on New Brunswickers, or once again, Canadians in terms of the scope of the entire country, and the similar kind of impositions on it. Because once again, the science was no different in Ontario or Quebec or BC or Alberta or Manitoba or Prince Edward Island or Nova Scotia or any of the provinces, right? There was no actual science and there was no evidence to back up any of the provinces, the provincial governments, their provincial healthcare counterparts, or their so-called experts, or the media mouthpieces who never questioned or challenged them on any of this stuff and went along vigorously in support of this nonsense, right? An initial report from Martin on the province's COVID-19 response released in September found that New Brunswick did not learn lessons from the 2009 H1N1 influenza pandemic. He said the province's pandemic plans were not updated with recommendations from the provincial government's 2009 report on the H1N1 crisis. Last month, the province's outgoing chief medical health officer, Dr. Jennifer Russell, said political preferences helped inform the decisions that were made during the COVID-19 pandemic, although she did not elaborate on them. Anyways, folks, let me just play this 2-minute video here. But you see, and once again, this will be linked in the description of the video below. But let me just play this 2-minute video here.
In his final report on the province's pandemic response, Auditor General Paul Martin found that the Department of Health did not keep records of the evidence used to make key public health decisions.
We have to audit to the evidence, and the evidence was not provided to us. So all we can do is ask them going forward. These experts need to retain their documentation to support those decisions. New Brunswickers want to know. They want to know they were making the right decisions at the right time.
The lack of documentation was a common theme. Martin also found that the Department of Public Safety failed to collect data on border wait times and enforcement and analyze how it measured up to targets. Most of the recommendations were on how to improve documentation and processes in future pandemic plans.
I would hope they would move towards that direction in the future to have those improvements set up in case this happens again.
Dorothy Shepherd spent time as both social development and health minister during the pandemic. She said she was surprised that the Department of Health didn't hold on to evidence used for decisions.
We made decisions based on the best information we had at the time. And so that's again why I believe that we need to look at that bigger scope of a discussion about how all of those decisions were made.
Liberal health critic Rob McKee says the lack of records makes it hard to evaluate the decisions in hindsight.
It's hard to assess, or it's hard to dig deep in the sense that were the decisions that were made the right ones and effective. And when they're not able to back up their decisions with evidence, at least evidence that they may have had, well, we don't know.
Green health critic Megan Mitten says she was disappointed by Martin's COVID reports and fears that it will affect how the province prepares for the next pandemic.
I'm concerned that it doesn't go deep enough. It doesn't cover a lot of things that I would have expected to be there, and that we're not going to get the result that we need, which is more guidance for how to make sure that some of the things that happened don't happen again.
Silas Brown, Global News.
So anyways, folks, I mean, obviously the critics from the other side of the political divide, right? The Green Party or the Liberals, they would have been right along, and they did go along with this stuff. Like this is just, political bantering back and forth. Oh, you did this. But meanwhile, yeah, I completely went along with it at the time, right? Anyways, I did see there's a few people that have joined into the chat there. I'll just pop in there real quick to say hi to everyone and then continue on. Actually, no, let me do this one thing first, because then I will be done with the COVID thing here. So let me bring this up. Share here. So, okay, okie dokie. Let me throw the old glasses back on here. So this one here is another New Brunswick article. Oh, no, actually, sorry, my bad. This is the same, actually, right, no. These are actually, I will mention, sorry, I thought it was something else, but these actually, particularly the next ones, I've added more. So that was CBC, then there was CTV that covered it. So once again, just so you know that there's multiple sources for this, but there was this other thing that I wanted to cover, and still as it pertains to COVID-19. Once again, under the politics section, this is a Canadian Press release, once again being copy and pasted by CBC News, with the headline, "No response from Ottawa as deadline set by Emergency Act Commission passes." Emergency Act. So no, this isn't COVID related. So, okay, so this one in particular, no, this is not COVID related. Yeah, okay, so I'm done with the COVID related stuff. Yeah, this is the part where it's more, because I had like a bunch of stuff lined up here. So anyways, let me just read it. Anyways, this is as it pertains to the Emergency Act. Findings from a year ago included 56 recommendations for the future. It's reported by Laura Osman, February 18th, 2024. The Liberal government has missed a deadline to respond to the findings and recommendations of Justice Paul Rouleau, who headed a federal inquiry into the government's first and only use of the Emergency Act in 2022. 1 year ago, now you got to remember, this was all part, if you invoke the act, this had to be done. So not like anyone went above and beyond to do this. It was literally, written in the act that you had to do this. This is just something that had to be done. But the fact that the Trudeau Liberals have not responded and missed a deadline, anyways, I'll read this. 1 year ago, Rouleau issued his final report on the government's decision to declare a public order emergency during the self-styled Freedom Convoy protest, which gridlocked the streets around Parliament and blocked international border crossings. Rouleau found the government was justified. Oh, yeah, we know but he could have, anyone with a reasonable stance could have said otherwise. So he hedged his bets on that. Yeah, but that, once again, he was appointed by Trudeau, right? That's really all we need to know. But made 56 recommendations for the future, including several suggested amendments to the law itself. He ordered the government to respond to those recommendations within 12 months. So he ordered the government to respond to those recommendations within 12 months, to say which of them will be implemented and provide a timeline. Rouleau didn't impose any penalties for missing the deadline, and it wasn't legally binding. Right? So I'm going to order you to do something, but yet there's no penalties if you don't respond, and it's not legally binding. So what the hell does that even mean, right? It's basically it's a big nothing burger, which is why the commission and the appointment of Rouleau himself was all a big farce. And the only thing that really matters in terms of the invocation of the EA was the decision handed down by Justice Mosley, a federal court that actually did go through the legal procedures and done through the actual courts, and has set genuine legal precedent that said that it was unconstitutional, unreasonable, and infringed on Canadians' inherent inalienable rights and freedoms. Right? That's what matters most, not this. Like I say, there's a reason why these things are placed under the political section, right? The Public Safety Minister's office says it will have more information about the government's response soon, and didn't offer a justification for missing Rouleau's deadline. One possible wrench is in the response is a federal court decision in January that contrasted Rouleau's conclusion. It called the government's invocation of the Emergencies Act a violation of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau declared the emergency just over 2 years ago, after thousands of protesters entrenched themselves in downtown Ottawa streets for weeks. They used big rigs and other vehicles in a demonstration of opposition to Trudeau government and COVID-19 public health restrictions. Mandates. It was mandates, right? It was mandates. But of course, CBC going to play politics. Anyways, now they're just going to go in and create their little political spin. But yeah, so the big takeaway from this particular story is the fact that, the government, of course, they didn't have to. So, that's why they didn't, I would suggest. But they were supposed to, right? By this deadline that is come and gone, they were supposed to at least respond to the 56 recommendations that was put in that public order, emergency order commission. But that's pretty disturbing. Anyways, let me just check and see how you folks are doing and maybe read a few comments here. Happy lunch. Hope you're having a good lunch there, Saniko, although it might be done by now. Your lunch might be done by now, but milk it. I'm not sure what that is, but right on, right on. I see the Mad Catter in the stream. Thanks for joining the stream, Mad Catter. Lamppost wind chimes. Lamppost wind chimes. I don't know. Not sure what that is. Okay. Everyone who works for government is nothing but a social. Oh, everyone who works for government is nothing but a social parasite. That's about 20% of Canadians making their living off the rest of us. Just sickening. And that's true. And well said, Dave Dismantled. And thank you for joining the live stream and chiming in there, because you're absolutely bang on with that. And the fact that, 1 in 5 Canadians, and that's just those who work directly. And the numbers might have even skewed up higher in recent times. It's really, really difficult to get your hands on that kind of information. And I got to tell you, because I try my best to get that kind of information. And it's like trying to find a needle in the haystack, probably for good reason, right? But anyways, you're absolutely right on that one. Of course, they will direct the blame back and forth until they pull off some more bullshit to distract everyone from further investigations. Bunch of effing parasites. You are so right. And thanks for pointing that out, Mad Catter. Benton, you know it. Bennett, you mean Bennett. Rules for me, not for thee. Yeah, ain't that the truth? Anyways, like I say, I'm just going to get back into This is another thing as it pertains to COVID-19, actually. Let me just read this up. Oh, and it must be really bugging them. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but I just thought, yeah, let's bring this on just for the heck of it. Because there's a lot you can, like I say, it's all about reading between the lines when I'm dealing with these establishment media articles and stuff, right? I'm not dumb enough or foolish enough to go or to fall for the kind of rhetoric they espouse, but like I said, there's a lot you can learn in what they don't say or how they present information. So this is a Calgary analysis. $350 billion in pandemic savings was supposed to give the economy a huge boost. It still hasn't happened. Savings stockpile won't help avoid a recession or help many Canadians squeezed by inflation. It's reported by Cal Back-X, February 20th, 2024. I just can't help but think when I first read this, is that because you got a bunch of MMT proponents, modern monetary theory, basically Keynesianism on steroids, right? And all this stimulus. Is this the fact that in your modeling, right? In your MMT modeling, if you do all of these things and prop all the Canadians up, that all that money will come back in return and then soothing things out, right? I can't help but think is shit. The modeling, the real world didn't turn out to be anything representative of the modeling we had. That's my first initial suspicion and thoughts on the whole this particular article. But I'll just read a little bit here. After the pandemic hit in 2020, some business owners and households were hard hit financially as a result of lockdown measures. But at the same time, many Canadians saw their bank accounts grow because of their reduced spending. Right? Yeah. Some benefit at other people's expense. That is literally like government 101. Yeah, sure, some people benefit from government largesse, but where's that government largesse come from? All off the backs of others, right? It's all about picking winners or losers in the economy, which is why people should really stop supporting government intervention in the economy and stop thinking that you're always going to be the benefactors, because no, that can change and pivot on a dime, depend on which thugs or gang are in power. Those savings ballooned to over $300 billion and became so large that economists expected there would be a big boost to the economy when all that money was eventually spent. Once again, the modeling, the MMT modeling, right? The Keynesian stimulus modeling on steroids. But today, that sizable stimulus still hasn't happened. Experts aren't sure exactly why. Well, then why the fuck do you call them experts if they have no clue, right? If you ask someone and they don't have a clue as to why, you ask them a question that's pertaining to their field of expertise, and they're like, I don't know. I mean, should you really be calling them fucking experts? I would say no, right? But look, once again, that term, experts. The savings did help the economy, but not nearly as much as envisioned, and the bulk of the money is still sitting in bank accounts. To this day, total household savings are still about $350 billion more compared to before the pandemic began, according to Statistics Canada. Lower and middle income households spent much of what they saved during the pandemic, right? So yeah, the poor and what used to be the middle class, basically, spent down any savings they had, right? The costs were incurred to them, but who didn't incur the cost and who benefited and are still continue to benefit? Well, we'll find out here real quickly, right? While higher income households have actually saved up more money, experts say. So once again, the whole pandemic and the stimulus and all that shit, it was basically a wealth transfer, and it's being basically admitted here, although they won't say it as much. This is covered in political language and once again, MMT economics kind of modeling bullshit, right? But here it is. If you know how to read between the lines, is the lower and middle income households were squeezed basically almost to death to benefit higher income households who were already doing quite well, but they're doing even better now. So that's a massive wealth transfer from the low and middle class to the wealthy and the elite. That's really what the headline should say. It was a massive wealth and income transfer from the low and middle class to the wealthy and the elite. And of course, people like myself were saying all along, back when the stimulus even started happening, back when the handouts started happening, it's like, well, you know how this is going to play out. Because, yeah, unlike Keynesians, people who understand classical economics or Austrian economics could see this coming from a mile away. And once again, it's kind of nice. I'll take my pat on the back for once again being proven wrong, even though they're not saying this as a means to give me a pat on the back. I'll do it instead. The amount has stayed relatively consistent over the last year or two, with little indication of a big spending splurge to come. There's still a lot of excess savings that's been accumulated during the pandemic that's still in the system. We haven't seen a drawdown of that, said Charles St. Arnold, an economist with Alberta Central Credit Union. The question at this moment is why? Why is our Keynesian or MMT model, why is it not panning out how we had thought? Yeah, because once again, right? Once again, where Austrians or classical economists will point out, it's like, yeah, central planning doesn't work as it intended. Humans have this thing called free will, right? And rational self-interest that will trump all your modeling every time, no matter what, without fail. As economists dive into this financial data, what's apparent is that not only the disparity between income levels in the country, but also a trend of how the overall amount of pandemic savings in Canada remains quite large, while the savings stockpile has nearly all evaporated in the U.S. So, yeah, they did a little different thing down in the U.S. than Canada. But, that's the other big divide between Canadians and the U.S. that we're seeing that's massively been ramped up. And I remember as a long-haul truck drivers, in the U.S. before, salaries were either on par or a little bit less in the U.S., but in terms of purchasing power, it was still much greater because of the fact that their dollar was either worth more, or that when they went to buy and consume their consumable goods or the roof over the head and stuff was much, much cheaper in comparison. Whereas now, not only is a lot of that still all the same, but now Americans are actually making, up to $30,000 per year on average, more than the average Canadian or the average Canadian household. So, a typical Canadian, let's say, that's making $50,000, well, that typical American now is making $80,000 a year, or upwards towards $80,000 a year. That in surplus at a $30,000 surplus in comparison, in contrast, and yet they still have much cheaper prices, right? Lower housing costs and all that comes with it. So how much better they're doing is even higher than the reported rate. Right. I'm not saying that America's doing everything right. That is for sure. There's a lot of failure down there too, but just not on the scale that it is in Canada under the Trudeau regime. Anyways, yeah, I guess that's basically all that really need to be taken away from that is, yeah, once again, and this will be linked in the description in the live stream below, but yeah, it was a major, massive wealth transfer from the lower and middle class to the connected, the wealthy, and the elite, right? And of course, how would you not know that? And get ready for even more of that. And thanks once again to Blacklock's reporter for reporting on this, because this is a big old, I even tried to look and see, are there any other established media outlets covering this? No. Now, Rebel Media and Blacklock's is reporting on this. And sadly, I've yet to, I do want to subscribe to Blacklock's, and you know what? Eventually, when I figure out some other things that I can kind of stop, what it is I've been spending it's small, but because I've been supporting, a lot of alternative outlets or alternative voices out there in alternative media and such, I've kind of spread myself thin these days, because especially and particularly now, this time of the year where my money is not as good as when I'm, out there, in my construction job, the paychecks are much bigger and better. So I'm kind of a little bit squeezed for these winter months, but I do want to get to the point where I can actually contribute to and pay to have, the great articles that come out of Blacklock's, rather than relying on the ones that are free or just being able to reference a small portion of their segments. So I really do want to get myself in the point where I'm helping support Blacklock's or Blacklocks, because they're so good in terms of actually, you know, offering an alternative perspective and actually holding power to account. But anyway, so this is reported just yesterday, Tuesday, February 20th, 2024. Borrowing $500 billion more. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, by cabinet order, has granted herself authority. So she granted herself authority to increase federal borrowing this fiscal year to a record $517 billion, over $500 billion, folks. And, you know, that kind of debt burden, you know, that's going to go on the backs of, once again, the working class, the working poor, you know, lower and middle income earners, or anyone who aren't part and parcel of the ruling establishment or big business, mega corporations, you know, and the likes, right? The elite among us. The figure is $73 billion higher than estimated for the year ending March 31st. You're simply saying, give me a blank check and then trust me. So once again, I'll read a little bit more from Rebel News, because Rebel basically ran with that. Rebel probably does pay for Blacklocks, and so has a little bit more information to present on that. But I mean, think about it. Just the $73 billion increase. It wasn't that long ago that even a $73 billion, you know, increase in spending would have been unthinkable. And that's just the rate of increase. That's like, just like how the media reports on inflation, right? And how they manipulate people's minds, or the people who are economically or financially illiterate, into thinking, oh, things are getting better. But no, not even $73 billion. That's just on top of what they were initially going to spend. The real number that really should concern Canadians, like, and not just those alive today, but future successive generations who are going to be forced to pay for this, because the Canadians who are alive today probably not going to live long enough to pay off all this and the other incurred debts and deficits that have been ongoing for forever, it seems, in this country, right? $517 billion, right? That just a few short years ago, our economy, and I'm not sure what's at now, was just over, like, what, between $1 and $1.5 trillion. So basically a third of the entire GDP of the country from just a few years ago, over a third of that is now going to be spent in just one fiscal year. I mean, you just can't imagine. It's really, even for someone like myself who understand numbers and economics, it's even hard for me to wrap my head around that massive amount of money. And you just got to wonder, where in the hell is all that money going to be going? You know damn well, are you seeing a shitload of hospitals being built? Bunch of new road, bunch of infrastructure project, right? New schools, housing. None of that, are you? None of that. So where's it going to go? Que bono. Who's going to benefit from, once again, even more government largesse, even an even higher amount of wealth and income redistribution from the working poor to the ruling class? Anyways, like I said, let me just read from a little bit more from Rebel News here. All right. So once again, Chrystia Freeland raised federal borrowing limit to a record $517 billion. Freeland previously testified at the Commons Finance Committee, stating the increase in the borrowing authority is in no way a blank check. Every single expenditure by the government needs to be authorized by Parliament. This reported by Tabitha Peters. Yeah. How many? Tell me lies, sweet lies, motherfucking lies. That's all we constantly get from these. Oh my God. Oh, just even look at that woman makes me want to throw up. But anyways, by a cabinet order, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Chrystia Freeland has allowed herself to escalate federal borrowing in the current fiscal year to a record $517 billion. This amount surpasses the previous estimate for the year concluding on March 31st by $73 billion. According to Blacklock's reporter, through an order dated February 15th under Financial Administration Act, Freeland defined $517 billion as the maximum aggregate principal amount of money that may be borrowed before April 1st, up from the previous limit of $444 billion. No reason was given for this change. And I mean, even at $444 billion, that's already still, upwards of approaching $500 billion. That already is ridiculously reckless spending, right? But to increase it even more to the tune of 73 billion. Like, Freeland previously testified at the Commons Finance Committee, stating the increase in the borrowing authority is in no way a blank check. Every single expenditure by the government needs to be authorized by Parliament. Oh, you mean the people who are, once again, going to be the benefactors? Right? I suppose there's a major reason why the NDP keeps propping up the Trudeau Liberals, even in spite of the Trudeau Liberals not actually doing what the NDP, wanted them to do, right? And that's another deadline that's coming up fast approaching. The whole pharma care thing. We'll see if Jagmeet makes good on his threat, although I would doubt he will, or is maybe some of this money is that where it's going to go. Who would know? Stay tuned. In 2021, Parliament augmented the federal debt ceiling by 56% from 1.168 trillion. So you got to remember, folks, like I say, just a few short years ago, right? Our debt, the debt ceiling at the time in 2021, so this is 2024, and we're just barely into 2024. So not even a full 3 years ago. The debt was $1.168 trillion. To now, this was in 2020. So they went from 1.168 trillion to 1.83 trillion dollars under the Borrowing Authority Act, stated Blacklocks. And now they're going to increase that even more so. So think about how heavily burdened Canadians are going to be, and the people who are going to be forced to pay for this, once again, are the working poor, the non-connected class, and those who actually want to be the middle class. And I'm not talking about government workers. I'm talking about the private sector middle class and future and successive generations. Conservative MP Ed Fast raised concerns accusing Freeland of seeking a blank check and implying a lack of transparency. Freeland countered this assertion, emphasizing that the increased borrowing authority is a transparent and open authorization of a level up to which the government may borrow. The government, once again, that borrowing, when they say borrowing, like, why doesn't anyone ever actually finish that thought, right? That sentence. Borrowing against, people who never voted for any of this shit. People who are going to be the ones that are going to be forced to pay for it, but had no say in the matter. That's who you're borrowing against. Those Canadian bonds, those government bonds, right? That's just a promise, just like a massa. That's just a promise, or a farm owner. That's just a promise against your future productivity, your labor, and all the work that you're going to do going forward. They're borrowing against you. And did you give the government permission to do that? I sure shit didn't. And I know neither have you. Referring to statements made during a 2020 Commons debate, Freeland stressed the absence of blank checks and free lunches, right? Meanwhile, that bitch is all about free lunches, right? Anyways, she's a politician, professional liar. Actually, I don't even know if you can call it professional, because they're just not very good at it, right? Matter of fact, they're seemingly quite open and honest about the fact that they're going to economically enslave Canadians. And yet, Canadians, I have no idea what it's going to take for Canadians to stand in opposition. I've watched so much shit take place just since the Trudeau Liberals came to power, never mind all the crap that happened under the Harper regime. And yet, Canadians just sit back docilely and meekly and very cowardly, and just like, give me more. Whip me more, massa. Whip me more. Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre questioned whether there was a specific dollar figure limiting the debt, to which Freeland replied, "We are mindful that limits exist." During a testimony before the Senate National Finance Committee on February 13th, Budget Officer Yves Guiraud expressed uncertainty about the government's plans and emphasized the need to wait and see. When asked about the realism of the borrowing limit by Senator Elizabeth Marshall, Giroux stated that it looks sufficient, but acknowledged the government's desire to maintain flexibility in case unforeseen events require additional borrowing on short notice. So, once again, but hey, Canadians will just suck it up, right? I don't know what the hell's wrong with them. Someday the payment's going to come due. Of course, a lot of the ones, especially the Keynesian-minded ones, is, well, we all die, right? In the end, we're all dead. Especially a lot of the, once again, not all, but especially a lot of the older cohorts, in particular the boomers who are benefiting themselves tremendously at government largesse, at being pigs of the trough, and this rampant wealth and income redistribution scheme under the Trudeau Liberals. They're like, well, yeah, it might come due someday, but it ain't going to be paid by me. I'm no longer going to be here, but I'm going to enjoy the ride while it lasts, huh? Out there having all that fun, spending all that money that your kids and grandkids are going to be forced to pay for, right? And the working poor. Talk about out of touch and evil and vile people. Wow. But yeah, there's more, folks. There's more. Because guess what else is coming back? In addition to all this, yeah, you see what's listed in there. Right? I know we're at an hour and 40 minutes, so I'm just going to I'm going to try to tie this up. I think we can tie this up before the 2-hour mark, but there's just 2 more things we got to cover yet. And yeah, universal basic income. Yeah, it's back on the table, as you know, sitting on the back burner. And yeah, the hacks in the establishment media are kind of, amplifying the rhetoric in terms of to lay some political cover for that as well. So this is a CTV news article. When Canada, or wait, is it because of all those laid off CTV workers or people from the newsroom waiting to get their government check, their government handouts? Could be, right? Could be. When could universal basic income start in Canada? Yeah. When can I get mine, right? That's more than likely. Like I say, you just got to read between the lines. So this is reported by Crystal Dabu, February 15th, 2024. Okay. Advocates say a universal basic income program could make a difference in helping people struggling in precarious and low-income jobs. But some wonder if it will effectively tackle the problem of poverty and if Canada could even afford a program. The concept is controversial, though the program has recently gained attention in a few provinces. Newfoundland and Labrador announced in November 2023 a 3-year program for residents aged 60 to 64, which will provide the equivalent of federal seniors benefits, the Canadian Press reports. So once again, a bunch of boomers, just got to point it out, folks. And once again, if you're not one of those boomers, sorry, I'm just, that's not you. Don't get mad at me for just pointing out reality, right? That there is this very, connected cohort of boomers out there who have been benefiting, been pigs at the trough, and have been bettering themselves at everyone else's expense for a very, 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 very long time. And they continue to do so. And seemingly you're so fucking greedy, they want even more. Anyways, I digress. The social detriments of health have a far greater impact on well-being than the healthcare system itself, said Newfoundland Premier Andrew Furey, an orthopedic surgeon. I'm proud to say that as a government, we are placing a heightened focus on the social detriments of health, both in our spending and our policy direction. What the hell does that even mean? Paging Orwell, can you help me out with this double speak here? I'm having a real hard time trying to decipher it. A report in November revealed details of a possible 5-year guaranteed basic income, which would provide income that's 85% of the government-determined official poverty line in Prince Edward Island. As well, the Senate is studying Bill S-233, which was introduced by Senate Kim Pate in 2021 to create a national framework for guaranteed livable basic income. Now, and of course, you folks already know that all you do is create another floor, right? So even if everyone got $2,000 more a month, we'll figure out what that $2,000 would be in terms of purchasing power, and then all that would be done is transferred into the wealth of whether it's corporations or any other product or service you consume, which would go up by whatever that percentage of price increase that you would see. So you're not going to benefit, just like every time the minimum wage gets increased. Well, the price of everything else gets increased to reflect that, and you're back to square one. It's the proverbial dog chasing its fucking tail for all of eternity, for infinity, folks. So this is not a new floor, just creates a new floor for price increases and a new way to transfer wealth from the working class, from the poor, to the wealthy and the connected class. That is all it'll do. And anyone that's foolish enough, especially if you're poor or in the working class, if you don't realize this, you need someone in your life to help explain this stuff so you don't support your own economic enslavement under a false pretense of benevolence. If passed, the bill would require the Minister of Finance to develop a national framework to provide everyone over the age of 17 in Canada, including temporary workers, permanent residents, and refugee claimants, with access to a guaranteed livable basic income. Wow, right? Wow. Just wow. Pate said the Canada Emergency Response Benefit for workers directly affected by COVID-19 shows the country has the infrastructure and ability to design programs quickly in response to economic need. And for people like myself who were pointing out this stuff in the past, and remember that leaked Liberal letter that said this is how it's going to get unfolded, and how we were suggesting like CERB was that's just a test basis. That's a test program to see if they can bring about this kind of universal basic income. Remember when people were calling us conspiracy theorists? And yet here it is, being acknowledged as fact, right? But yeah, once again, people have to wait for their thought leaders in government or the media to finally catch up to telling people the kind of things that I've been telling them for years. Sad, sad reality. It'd be nice to be out in front of this stuff rather than playing catch up. But hey, I digress once again. Pate said, oh yeah, we can afford guaranteed livable income, but what we cannot afford are the human, social, financial, and health costs of continually abandoning people to poverty and homelessness, Pate said in an email to ctvnews.ca. Recommendations to implement guaranteed livable income date back at least 5 decades, notably when recommended by 1970s report of the Special Senate Committee on Poverty and the Commission on the Status of Women. As Canada's Senate studies the bill, ctvnews.ca spoke with experts on the prospects of the program in Canada. Anyway, so this is, once again, this is just going to be rhetoric in terms of how they can bring this, pretending that, we know that people have questions, but trust me, they've all got the answer. They've all got the answers for you, folks. Not in the sea here. Move along. Don't worry. The experts have got this all figured out, right? And once again, if you're foolish or naive enough to trust them, then shame the hell on you. And yeah, that will be linked in the description of the video below. And I can't help but think this last article might be where a lot of this money will be going as well, right? And yeah, there's just one thing left that I have to cover here, or not have to, but want to cover here. So here we go. Now, this is just for now, but once all the budgeting is implemented, who's to say how much more it's going to get ramped up? So this, once again, under the politics section, Canada set to help bankroll massive ammunition shipments to Ukraine, sources. Zelensky says Ukrainian troops pulled back from strategic city in part due to a lack of ammunition. Reported by Murray Brewster, February 21st, 2024. Canada has signaled it's prepared to get behind a Czech Republic initiative to ship tens of thousands of artillery shells from different countries to Ukraine on an urgent basis. Although the details are still being finalized, defense sources say the federal government could contribute as much as $30 million to the plan, which was proposed at the opening of the Munich Security Conference by Czech Republic President Petr Pavel. Pavel's government said it has been able to source up to 800,000 shells of NATO standard caliber, along with shells of other calibers from unidentified non-NATO countries. It says it needs financial support to get the ammunition to Ukraine. So, right? Unbelievable. And trust me when I say that 30 million will pale in comparison to what they probably still have in store. Think about it. They're budgeting up to $517 billion. Defense Minister Bill Blair said Canada has been talking to the Czechs, but wouldn't discuss specifics. I've entered into the memorandum of understanding with one of our European allies, the Czech Republic, with respect to perhaps acquiring munitions that they currently have in their possession that will enable us to make them available more rapidly to Ukraine as we ramp up our own production, Blair said Monday after announcing that Canada will contribute hundreds of drones to the Ukraine military, which once again will all prove to be once again a squandering of our resources, of our money, and it will not amount to anything. I assure you that, and there is plenty of precedent to prove and back up my claim, right? Canada's allies, meanwhile, fear that Ottawa may choose to invest in munition production through the Czech Republic while continuing to defer building up domestic weapons manufacturing capacity, said the defense sources who are familiar with the file but are not authorized to speak publicly. Blair, meanwhile, said he hopes to have more to say in the not so too distant future about how we're investing in increased Canadian production of munitions. The Liberal government has for months been studying proposals from two of the country's ammunition makers, General Dynamics Ordnance and Tactical Systems in Valleyfield, Quebec, and IMT Defense in Ingersoll, Ontario, to ramp up production of the so-called operational or M795 variant of the NATO standard 155 millimeter shell. Canada currently produces each month about 5,000 of the M107 version of the shell, known as the training round. Defense sources say the federal government's hesitation about boosting munitions manufacturing relates in part to the projected $400 million investment needed to build additional production lines. Deputy Defense Minister Bill Matthews said Canada and the U.S. have held bilateral talks on how to ramp up weapon supplies for Ukraine, but those discussions quickly led into a broader debate about how to refill domestic military inventories depleted by donations. In his nightly address on Monday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said a shortage of munitions was one of the reasons his country troops had to withdraw from the strategic eastern city of Avdiivka last weekend. The Russians, are taking advantage of delays in aid to Ukraine, Zelensky said, referring to the gridlock in the U.S. Congress, which has tied up $60 billion in military and economic aid. He said Ukrainian troops keenly felt a shortage of artillery, air defense systems, and long-range weapons in Avdiivka, where Ukrainians battled a fierce Russian assault for 4 months despite being heavily outnumbered and outgunned. In Munich, Pavel said the Czech Republic had managed to locate about 800,000 artillery shells of NATO and Soviet-era caliber that could be shipped to Ukraine in a few weeks. He said the country's representatives have managed to find about 500,000 155 millimeter artillery shells and 300,000 122 shells abroad. Anyways, I want to get to the point. So you're talking about what, 800,000? Then here you got 450,000 shell, like artillery. Up here you're talking about 200,000. So you're looking, into the hundreds of thousands, right? Hundreds of thousands here. Where was that part? Maybe it's not in this particular article. But I do remember reading an article. Yeah, maybe it's not in this particular article. No, it's not here. But I will point out that Russia, apparently, I may misquote the number, so I'll, like I say, this may be an incorrect number, but from what I remember, it's something like 1 million or more, or in excess of that Russia has been ramped out their production. So once again, vastly outstripping even any of the hopes and aspirations. So what will it actually do in terms of helping Ukraine, other than the continued slaughter of not just Ukrainians, but Russians as well, and the continued destruction of that country? And of course, which forces more and more migration to countries such as ours, where once again, we're not just paying for the war over there, but we're having to pay for and prop up the people who are immigrating to this country as well. So once again, multiple layers of costs and bureaucracy imposed on the working class, the working poor, and I guess a little bit of the middle class. Anyone that's actually productive in this country is who's going to be footing the bill once again. And for what? Just like the 20 years over in Afghanistan, or the fiasco in Iraq, or in Libya, right? And all these foreign conflicts and interventions that has cost us men and treasury, dearly, and have all proven to be absolute abstract failures and never achieved or attained the goals or their desires, right? Anyway, so yeah, that's about enough of that. I'll like I say, I'll make sure that all this stuff is linked in the description of the video below. And I'll just check on a few of your comments here before we tie up the stream. And yeah, a minute and 50 or an hour and 54. So yeah, I think I nailed it. We'll have it done by the 2-hour mark. That's great. I usually like try to keep these under 2 hours. Exactly, Mad Catter. Yeah. Expert equals funded idiot. And you are so right about that. Hey, I'm an expert, but I don't know jack. Respect my authority. Yeah. That's about right. That's about right. They are open books and they all love free lunches, suppers, trips around the world, mansions, and blood of. Yeah, it's pretty wild, right? It is pretty wild. I see we got a new entered into the live stream. What's going on? Pat Twiddale, thank you for joining the live stream. Really appreciate that. Ronald Reagan said, if it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. If it stops moving, fund it. Good quote. Good quote, Pat Twiddle. I'd rather back Russia just to piss them off. Well, I mean, whatever. Like I say, it's ultimately we're the one that's going to be harmed no matter what. Like I say, because none of this is going to work out. Well, this is the thing. Not that I'm even in agreement or allied with their goals or aspirations, but even if I were, I'd have to be that sober second thought, that voice in the room to say, yeah, you fuckers said a lot of things for a lot of your foreign interventions, and none of it has ever come to fruition in the way you painted it. Your modeling seems to be really, really messed up and not even close to representative of reality. This is the thing with these utopians or these interventionists or these central planner types or these control freaks. They think that humans are like, I don't know, they treat like, I guess what it is they do have a lot of people who are like pawns on a chessboard that they can control, manipulate, but they seem to forget that there's a whole other cohort of people living on this big old planet that aren't representative of just the pawns and will foil your plans, right? In a moment's notice and in a heartbeat. That's the problem with central planners. They think that they can manipulate everybody, but no, they can't. They never have been able to. And no amount of data will get to the point where they will ever be able to do so going forward. But anyways, thanks for all you folks that did join the stream. I really appreciate it. Thank you as well, Mad Catter. Really appreciate that. Hey, Gato, what's going on? Howdy to you, sir. I'm sure you'll get a chance to check this live stream later on, or maybe you've been sitting in the background, just kind of enjoy it. But anyways, thanks to all you folks. I really appreciate it. I'll be doing, like I say, still waiting to hear back from a couple folks that I'm going to be interviewing, and maybe another individual might be interviewing me. I did see actually I'll bring this up. I'll just remind you folks here. Let me bring this on real quick before I do tie this up. I got a couple more minutes. I do see that Larkin Rose noticed my post there in terms of supporting him and has reposted. But anyways, I just wanted to mention you folks once again. If you can afford to donate to a very worthy cause or project, I highly recommend helping out Larkin Rose with the Mirror Project. Links to where and how you can donate is in the description of the video directly below. And this, once again, if you go onto my X page, my formerly Twitter page, go on my profile, you'll see that it's even highlighted on my profile. And once again, it gives the video there, and then there's a big long description of what the project is about, and another video contained within that to help you understand. Like I say, this is a really, really, really important project. I'm definitely going to help support it in some way, and I definitely highly recommend that you folks do as well, because there are very few people out there that are putting in the amount of work and effort, right, and have the knowledge and the know-how to help expand on our knowledge, to inform and truly enlighten us to get to the point where we even understand, or well, we're okay with that, but we're a whole lot of other of our cohorts or Canadians, Americans, or whoever you may reside, whatever plantation you reside on, that really need to know this information. Because once again, libertarians, anarchists, voluntarists, critical thinkers, we're not claiming to be, the ones that will be the arbiters of any kind of solutions to all the myriads of problems. But once again, the one thing that we do know and understand fundamentally is you need that basis. You need that foundational knowledge. You at the very least need to know, right, the reality of the world that you live in before you could ever come up with, and each individual will have to figure this stuff on their own, or individuals can get together and form groups or communities to help figure this stuff out, whether it's in local jurisdictions or to help others, maybe halfway around the world. How that all plays out, once again, we're not central planners, but we understand the power of markets, and the power of markets, the power of ideas it's decentralized. It's people thinking critically about these issues and implement their own forms of solutions to the many myriads of problems. And once again, the biggest problem that underlines all the other subset of problems that we're dealt with on a daily basis is the lack of knowledge in terms of what it is to be free, to be a free human being. And the best way, one of the best methods to learn that is, once again, to get it through arts, entertainment, and cultural aspects in terms of things or projects such as the Mirror, because it does it in a much more fluid manner rather than someone sitting there wagging their finger or preaching at you, right? I understand how these things work, and I'm glad to have people like Larkin Rose out there that are putting in these efforts, and anyone else who's helping to support them. So once again, if you wouldn't mind doing that, be really appreciative. Anyone that was thinking about even donating to this live stream or to my page or anything, to my channel, I mean, yeah, I'll easily forego that, and just please help out Larkin Rose with this project, The Mirror, because once again, it'll prove to be, I think, a great benefit to not just society, no matter what country you live in, but to humanity as a whole. Anyways, thanks for all you folks that did join the live stream. Really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.